After all, libertarians such as Paul and myself, and I guess all of you, reject affirmative action, racial set-asides, and anti-discrimination ordinances, and all other forms of state-enforced special treatment for so-called minorities, precisely because we oppose racism or any form of collectivism. This railing against populism, that is, against any appeal to ordinary Americans, is part and parcel of the Beltway's perversion of libertarianism, which relegates its pet libertarian ideologues to the role of court jesters whose intellectual preoccupations, drug legalization, and the celebration of cultural libertinism are considered amusing and mostly harmless. Now, in considering the future of libertarianism, one has to imagine at least two futures. One for the kept intellectuals of the Beltway set, and the other for the populist grassroots movement that roiled the American hinterlands with its radical opposition to imperialist wars and fiat money. The former will persist as long as its subsidies persist. But the so-called Orange Line Mafia has really discredited itself with its vicious hostility directed at Dr. Paul, which has been on display long before the newsletter controversy broke out. On the other hand, the Ron Paul wing of the movement has all the energy, the vitality, and the staying power of a movement that really does have a future. Foreign policy, the question of whether we're going to be an empire or remain a republic, is the overriding issue of our day. And anyone who abstains in this realm really ceases to be relevant. I find it odd, therefore, that the leading libertarian print magazine, Reason, took no editorial stance on the invasion of Iraq, but merely opened it up for debate. That's funny. To these people, such issues as drug legalization and gay marriage, God help us, are never debatable. The correct libertarian position is simply assumed. Yet when it comes to the question of mass murder, well, that's just a matter of opinion. The error made by the Cato crowd, especially after their fateful move to Washington, is similar to that made by those French libertarian theorists, including the economist Fenelon of the 18th century, who hoped to persuade the French ruling class to give up its power over the economic life of the nation and inaugurate an era of peace and freedom. Their strategy was to tutor the Duke of Burgundy, second in line to succeed to the French throne, and ally themselves with the Burgundians at the French court. When the king's first heir died, their hopes rose. These were dashed, however, as the Duke himself and his entire family fell sick with the same illness, which likewise proved fatal, dealing a death blow to their plans to make France a laissez-faire paradise. Writing of the tragic end of the Burgundians in his History of Economic Thought, Rothbard was clearly addressing himself, at least in part, to his factional opponents in the libertarian movement, namely the Cato Group, which had chosen the path of influencing the elites rather than making a populist appeal to ordinary Americans against the power elite. And I quote from the History of Economic Thought. The tragic end of the Burgundy Circle illuminates a crucial strategic flaw in the plans, not only of the Burgundy Circle, but also of the physiocrats, Turgot, and the other laissez-faire thinkers of the later 18th century. For their hopes and their strategic vision were invariably to work within the matrix of the monarchy and its virtually absolute rule. The idea, in short, was to get into court, influence the corridors of power, and induce the king to adopt libertarian ideas and impose a laissez-faire revolution. end quote. The Burgundy Circle learned it couldn't be done, but when it comes to libertarians, no strategic error is so egregious that it isn't repeated at least once in a generation, if not more, and always with the same results. The Beltway libertarians are, for the most part, pursuing the Burgundian course, and they will have no better results than Fenelon and Turgot. On the other hand, the Paulistas, the radicalized, fully energized, and decidedly non-Beltway activists who were and are inspired by Ron Paul's untrammeled vision of liberty, have had some success. Surely the Paul campaign has done more to popularize libertarianism than the combined efforts of the Koch-funded organizations have over the past 2 decades. It's no accident that the Paul campaign springs from the radical Rothbardian wing of the movement. Populism, an appeal to the great majority of the American people on behalf of liberty, is no vice. And if that is extremism, then let the denizens of the Beltway make the most of it. Thank you.